Many of the soldiers who fought the Nazis in World War II, particularly on the Western Front, will tell you that there was something quite strange about them. They will tell you that many Nazi soldiers seemed to lack the fear that is usually commonplace in the theatre of war, where there is death and destruction all around you. They will tell you the German troops were in a state of extreme euphoria on the battlefield and were able to act completely remorselessly. The Nazis also always appeared high on morale despite the insane physical and mental demands placed on them, and were able to keep going for long hours without much rest or food. You see, through the help of pharmacology, the Nazis essentially found a way to create super soldiers. Or so they thought anyway, until they realized that they had made a grave mistake. This is the story of the Wehrmacht's insane plan to create the world's most effective fighting force and how the plan blew up in their faces. Coming up on this week's episode of Stranger Than Fiction. While all of us are glad that the Allies were eventually able to defeat the Nazis and the other Axis powers in World War II, historians will tell you that the result was far from inevitable. In fact, until quite deep into the war, the Nazis clearly had the upper hand. In the initial stages of the conflict, the Nazi war machine seemed like an unstoppable force, pulling off incredible maneuvers and decimating opponents in the battlefield. There was almost an air of invincibility about them as they rampaged their way through Western Europe, conquering one nation after another. How exactly were they able to do this? Speed. You see, in The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote that speed is the essence of war. The famous Chinese military general and strategist said, "Take advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness, travel by unexpected routes, and strike him where he has taken no precautions." No fighting force in human history implemented this strategy better and on a larger scale than the Wehrmacht. The Nazis pioneered what later became an infamous strategy, Blitzkrieg or lightning war. You see, the German army in the 1930s was not as powerful and as battle-ready as their French or United Kingdom counterparts. At the start of the war, the German Reich not only had a considerably smaller fighting force than their rivals, but they were also outgunned in terms of weaponry. So how could they conceivably win a war against their powerful enemies? This is where Blitzkrieg comes in. The Blitzkrieg strategy relies on attacking the enemy at their weakest point with such force and speed that you cause huge disruption among their ranks. In other words, you win by disorientating the enemy rather than destroying them on the battlefield. The way the Nazis achieved this is by concentrating their mechanized and most destructive forces on the very tip of their formation, which meant that even if they were vastly outnumbered by the enemies, they always had the advantage at the point of attack, allowing them to break through the lines and cause chaos. The main principle of Blitzkrieg is to keep moving with speed and ensure that your forces never stop, no matter what. This strategy emphasized the surprise element, catching the enemy off guard by the unprecedented quickness of the mechanized attack and advance. However, there was one major weak link in the Blitzkrieg strategy: the soldiers. Unlike machines, humans suffered from fatigue, weariness, fear, and doubt. The soldiers required regular rest and sleep, along with nourishment, which slowed down the military advance. So the Germans realized that in order to win the war, they had to find a way to ensure that their soldiers can keep going for long hours with almost superhuman stamina. And this is when they decided to turn to what they saw as a miracle drug, methamphetamine. Methamphetamine, which is now commonly known by its street names like meth, crank, ice, is a type of amphetamine, which are a family of synthetic drugs that stimulate the central nervous system, reducing fatigue and appetite while increasing wakefulness and a sense of well-being. However, what sets meth apart from amphetamines like Adderall and Ritalin is that in comparable doses, much greater amounts of the drug get into the brain, making it a more potent and longer-lasting stimulant, with meth thus being highly addictive and having a high potential for widespread misuse. Upon initial use, the individual can experience a powerful rush, including a burst of energy and confidence, which is why the Nazis loved the drug. The Nazi ideology was quite fundamentalist in its anti-drug stance. Social use of drugs was considered both a sign of personal weakness and a symbol of the country's moral decay in the wake of a traumatic and humiliating defeat in World War I. However, in sharp contrast to drugs such as heroin or alcohol, methamphetamines were not about escapist pleasure. Rather, they were taken for hyper-alertness and vigilance. While other drugs were banned or discouraged, methamphetamine was touted as a miracle product. Energizing and confidence-boosting, methamphetamine played into the Third Reich's obsession with physical and mental superiority. A Berlin-based pharmaceutical company, Temmler Werk, began selling methamphetamine under the brand name Pervitin, which became quite popular across Germany in the 1930s. But the drug's most important use was yet to come. Dr. Otto Friedrich Ranke, the director of the Research Institute of Defense Physiology, had high hopes that Pervitin would prove advantageous on the battlefield. His goal was to defeat the enemy with chemically enhanced soldiers who could give Germany a military edge by fighting harder and longer than their opponents. After testing the drug on a group of medical officers, Ranke believed the Pervitin would be an excellent substance for rousing a weary squad. Thus began the regular administration of Pervitin tablets to the Wehrmacht, and the drug proved even more effective than Dr. Ranke and the German High Command had hoped. It was the last missing piece needed to fulfill the Blitzkrieg strategy, helping the Nazi war machine become the most effective fighting force in the world. The first real test of this new chemically enhanced Wehrmacht was during the invasion of Poland in 1939, the event which officially kick-started World War II. 29 million Pervitin tablets were administered to Nazi soldiers during the campaign, and the results were there for all to see. In little over a month, the Polish defense was completely decimated, with Poland's 1.3 million strong army proving no match for Adolf Hitler's war machine. While the British and the French both declared war on Germany as soon as they invaded Poland, the German troops had captured Warsaw before the Allies could muster up any sort of response. The Blitzkrieg strategy, led by chemically enhanced soldiers, proved a huge success. The Germans realized that in Pervitin they had discovered a pharmacological wonder weapon that would give them a huge military edge over their rivals. The soldiers loved it, reporting that it made them alert and feel almost invincible, allowing them to operate without any empathy or restraint. The regular supply of Pervitin tablets also helped Nazi troops stay fresh and cheerful, with many being quite euphoric about the cause they were fighting for. The Blitzkrieg strategy, powered by Pervitin, then kicked into hyperdrive as the Wehrmacht rampaged their way through Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, with each campaign lasting no more than weeks, and in some cases, just days or hours, with the German servicemen receiving more than 35 million Pervitin tablets between April and July of 1940. Then came what was arguably the Blitzkrieg's biggest test, the German invasion of France. Even though the French troops, who outnumbered the Germans, knew what was coming and had fortified their defences, and the French battle tanks were superior to that of their German counterparts, speed once again proved to be the key to the Nazis' success as their forces advanced with terrifying pace, moving day and night to cover more than 120 miles in just 5 days. Using concentrated attacks, they were able to break through the defences of the French, who were deployed evenly across the front line, with the Nazis encircling their opponents and disrupting their supply lines. The Nazis managed to capture Paris in quite astonishing speed, forcing France to surrender. While Nazi propaganda put their victories down to the superiority of their soldiers and their unwavering belief in their cause, the reality is that most of it was down to pharmacology, as Blitzkrieg would simply not have been anywhere near as effective without soldiers who were jacked up on meth. One just needs to listen to the testimonies of the soldiers who fought the Nazis to realize the huge influence that Pervitin had on the battlefield. Some American and British veterans say that the German soldiers they encountered on the battlefield were elated and almost delirious, and that many of them were in a belligerent mood and fought in utterly unpredictable ways, which are well-known effects of meth. However, all good things must come to an end, and the Nazis found this out the hard way, soon realizing that they had a big problem on their hands. You see, meth has major side effects over the medium and long term, including paranoia, irritability, chronic insomnia, and nervousness. Additionally, when the drug wears off, one experiences what is colloquially called a meth crash, which is characterized by lethargy, cravings, confusion, and anxiety, unless they are administered another dose of the drug. The Nazis realized that they had got their soldiers addicted to a dangerous substance, and that in the days after taking the drug, the soldiers were often in much worse physical and mental condition than they were before. Apart from unintentional overdoses, many soldiers in the Wehrmacht started suffering circulatory disorders and even heart failure. On realizing the problem they had created, the German command then started limiting the use of Pervitin to just important military campaigns rather than handing them out like candy, like they were previously doing. However, getting the soldiers off the substance proved a major challenge, as they often needed a long time to recover when they stopped taking the pill, as they were both physically and psychologically addicted to the substance. So, over the long term, rather than creating a more efficient fighting force, Pervitin did the opposite, leading to a bunch of poorly motivated soldiers and decreasing the fighting efficiency of the Wehrmacht. Before long, it becomes quite clear that use of meth was having a significant negative impact on combat performance. In fact, in one instance in the latter stage of the war, around 100 German infantrymen surrendered to their enemy without a fight as they ran out of ammunition. Apparently, the night before, they had all entered a meth-induced psychosis, imagined that they were under attack and fired all their ammunition at nothing. In the discipline of history, one cannot discuss counterfactuals with any sort of confidence, which is why we can never know for certain how World War II would have turned out had the Nazis not weaponized meth. Nor can we say for sure if the troops getting addicted to the substance played a significant role in the Nazis' eventual defeat. Historians understandably put the eventual decimation of the German army down to the poor decisions made in the latter stages of the war by their high command and by Hitler, who himself was addicted to a cocktail of drugs at that point, including meth. However, it is quite ironic that the Nazi World War II story followed a similar pattern to a typical meth trip. An initial wave of euphoria and invincibility which leads one to act delusionally and dangerously before being followed up by feelings of utter helplessness and regret. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. And if you want to learn more about such unique stories, subscribe to the channel. We will continue bringing you ideas that blow your mind, as the truth, as they say, is stranger than fiction.